Hi there, everyone. Good morning. My name is Stuart Richner, CEO of Richner Communications and publisher of Herald Community Newspapers. Welcome to the second part of Herald Inside LI's discussion on the power of 5G and our final Herald Inside LI webinar of 2020. We are excited to continue last week's conversation about how 5G will impact our communities, especially related to healthcare and education. Joining us today are Caitlin Brookner, Dr. Purna Prasad, Anna Rua, and Fan Ye. Thank you for being here this morning. I would also like to thank today's sponsors, New Yorkers for 5G and Crown Castle, for supporting Herald Inside LI and our Long Island communities. With so many questions and concerns about 5G, I am sure that this morning's discussion will be a lively one. I'll now turn it over to Herald Inside LI host, Skye Ostreicher, and our esteemed panel to answer all of your questions. Skye?
Thank you, Stuart. And good morning, everyone. Welcome back to Herald Inside LI. I'm your host, Skye. Like Stuart said, today is the second half of a conversation we began last week about the power of 5G. There were a lot of thought-provoking questions that came through during the course of the discussion with last week's panelists, so we wanted to make sure we took some time today to address some of the misconceptions and perhaps lesser-known facts about 5G. So allow me to give a little recap from last time. We learned that 5G is the next level of wireless connectivity that will further advance our society technologically. Of all the negative ways COVID has impacted our lives, at least one positive thing is that it's propelled us into the virtual world we've spoken about as the future, a world where we are together apart. Virtual learning, working remotely, spending time with family through a computer screen, telemedicine. What's next? We already have smartphone apps that are connected to household security systems, so you can not only see cars that enter your driveway while you're out, but you can lock and unlock your front door through an app. And of course, pet and baby monitors to hear and see a sleeping little one in the other room. Today's cars are equipped with GPS data that updates traffic information every 4 minutes to guide you to your destination and avoid accidents happening in real time. Do you remember having to write down directions to get somewhere? What about the sounds of dial-up internet? We've come a long way, and that's all in our lifetime. Imagine how much more there is to see. And that's what we'll talk about today, about the technological advancements coming our way with wireless technology, what's being studied, and how it'll advance the healthcare space, and what it means to all of us, for Long Islanders and the world. How we'll each be impacted personally. Imagine you don't have to be a doctor or a nurse to monitor someone's blood pressure or blood sugar. Imagine an app on your iPhone in New York and you could monitor your father or grandmother's blood pressure who's living in Florida. That's what 5G can do. Real local, real news, bringing you the facts. This is part 2 of the Power of 5G webinar, sponsored by New Yorkers for 5G and Crown Castle. And on today's panel, I have with me Caitlin Brookner, spokesperson for the New Yorkers for 5G Coalition, which aims to educate people about the capabilities of 5G and the infrastructure it requires. Anna Rua, New York Government Affairs Manager for Crown Castle, the nation's largest provider of communications infrastructure. That's the towers, small cells, and fiber, which is part of 5G. Fan Ye, professor in the Electrical and Computer Engineering Department at Stony Brook University, who's working on research and development of wireless technology. And Dr. Purna Prasad, the Chief Technology Officer for Northwell Health, the largest health system in New York, who's headquartered here in Nassau County. Welcome all, and we welcome your expertise to the panel. And I encourage those of you who are watching to use the Q&A button on the bottom of your screens to type in any questions you may have, and we'll try and cover everything. The last item of business before we dive into discussion is to take a selfie, which will be used in the print and online version of the Herald Community Newspaper's article that will come out next week, recapping today's conversation. So panelists, smile. Great, thank you. And today's webinar is recorded. And as Stuart said, it's the last webinar of 2020, our season 1 finale. And you can catch all 14 episodes on demand on our website, liherald.com/InsideLI. And season 2 will begin on January 7th, 2021. So mark your calendars. We have lots more planned, but for now, 5G. So let's start with Anna, the Government Affairs Manager for Crown Castle. Anna, last week, your colleague confirmed that 5G is safe. And I'll put the slide back up to show what I mean about the safety scale of electromagnetic waves. But I'm hoping you can further expound on the health and safety of 5G and explain why there are some negative health claims.
Thanks so much, Sky, and great to be here with you today, and great to be amongst my fantastic co-panelists. Yeah, there's a tremendous, and this is a fantastic question and topic that I think is really timely and on top of minds of all Long Islanders. The reality is that there is a tremendous amount of misinformation that is guiding folks' understanding of wireless telecommunications. I want to just full stop reiterate and reaffirm folks that the technology has been peer reviewed both nationally and internationally by really renowned and reputable organizations, and has been found safe. The FDA, the National Health Institute, the American Cancer Society are just a few of the peer reviewed organizations that talk about, the technology being safe, the physics being essentially the same that they have been historically. And, radio frequency, as you can see on the slide, is a spectrum, right? And so you have what are called ionizing spectrums, and that is deemed unsafe. So you have gamma rays and X-rays, and you don't want to be exposed to those. But then you start getting into the non-ionizing part of the spectrum, which essentially is visible light. So tanning, you have your microwave, you have your radios, you have your baby monitors, you have your indoor Wi-Fi, you have your cars that are now radio enabled and have been historically radio enabled. So we have our iWatches and our smart devices and our Internet of Things that are essentially guiding and making our lives easier. So, this is something that is very strictly regulated by the FCC. It is something that has been peer reviewed for over 60 years, and the medical canon, full stop, is that the technology is safe.
Thank you. I want to turn to our experts, Stony and Dr. Prasad, if you have anything to add from a medical and health perspective or from an education perspective about the safety of the technology.
Sure, I can go first. This entire debate and discussion about the electromagnetic impact on the human cells has been going on for more than 60 years, as Anna said. I authored one of the first papers back in the early 90s, and we found absolutely no evidence, looking at some very acute factors like specific absorption ratio of the tissues when exposed to radio waves. And it was also confirmed from a joint paper that was between Stanford, where I was, and then Berkeley, UC Berkeley, that we are exposed to 10 times that radiation when you walk in the sun, when you actually have your afternoon walks. So as the slide indicated, a low frequency, a low wavelength has absolutely no effect on the human body. So, it's good to have a debate. It's good to recheck the scientific facts, but as of today, as of the current knowledge, there is no evidence that that any ill effects exists when human cells are actually exposed to electromagnetic, especially the type of wavelengths that we are looking at for 4G, 5G, for the microwaves and things like that. And FCC and FDA, of course, is very, very stringent about it. And there is peer-reviewed, literature that one can look up to. So we got to put that to rest if we have to, use the capacity and the capability of 5G, which is very encouraging, as well as it's going to save lives.
Okay, thank you for that. And I hope that that answers a lot of the questions that came up last time and moving forward. And we'll talk more about, maybe let's get into the evolution of 5G. What exactly is it? And I mentioned dial-up internet. Maybe we can talk about the evolution of the internet. And I have a slide for that too that you sent me. Here we go. So who wants to guide us through it? Anna or maybe Fanye, because you study this at Stony Brook. You tell me who wants to take us through exactly how we got to where we are and what the next step is.
Yeah, I can do that. So internet actually started way back in the 60s during the Cold War. Legend was back then people were worried about nuclear destruction. So DOD, Department of Defense, they try to build a network that can withstand such kind of strike. That's supposedly the origin of the internet, but long story short, it's been built to become a global network, extremely robust, even though sometimes we still experience, some website down. But if you look at the scale, the number of websites, number of business that are running at this time is surprisingly robust. And the internet has been mostly on wired network. Okay, you need a cable connection to talk to any other computer. And then naturally, the idea of using wireless to bridge that last hop, so you don't have to be, dragging cable around at home, naturally became the first generation technology. It's mostly used for delivery analog voice, like you're seeing here in the slide. I still remember back in the 90s, those Motorola phones. I don't know how many of you have used one of those. It's extremely big and bulky, and sometimes people joke you can use it as a defense because it's hard and heavy like a rock, right? And then second generation, there's change from analog to digital voice, and then you can also send text messages, which we use every day now. And 3G, that's where initially mobile data was brought to mobile devices. And this makes everything really interesting because back to 2G is not too much difference from a conventional phone. The only difference is you can take it everywhere, okay? But then 3G, because of the mobile data, now you actually bring the whole internet to your phone. Your phone is no longer a phone starting from that time, okay? It has actually become a computer with different kind of applications that we're using. And the 4G is the next step that boosts the data speed compared to 3G multiple fold, so that many of the applications that we are indeed get used to every day, like Amazon, Netflix, these all become possible because of the high data rate, low latency, and you can move around. So that's really what drove the explosion of the mobile internet. And then 5G is just naturally the next step because people are always asking for higher data rate, lower loss, lower latency. And the 5G supposedly, there are many extremely interesting application scenarios which would require high data rate and low latency. For example, augmented reality, where you have HD video streaming. And people are talking about remote surgery, where doctors would be able to operate on a patient thousands of miles away. And you got to have extremely high data rate because of the high definition of the video you need to transmit, and also extremely low latency because the operation that you're doing has to, any action that you're performing has to be in real time in response to whatever the patient is undergoing. So that's naturally how technology evolution bring us here today.
And I remember having my first cell phone and we playing Snake. That was the game on the Nokia phone, and having to hit the 111 to get to the letter C. So, but that was how many years ago? That was 15 years ago? Like, how fast has all this happened? That's really the question.
Yeah, technology many times is not a linear change. It's more like acceleration. Once you are on certain path, then it's becoming faster and faster. If you look at the rate how computing speed has been going based on Moore's law in the past more than half a century, the same thing actually can be said about communication speed. From 1G, 2G, right now to 5G, data rate now many times even exceeding what you can get on the cable, which is indeed surprising and amazing.
So what about people that say that they're okay with 4G? They don't see the need for 5G, the lay person that, you know, may not understand the value in 5G.
That's a very interesting point. Actually, I was at a certain time along that line as well. Let me tell you a story. Back then, I was a student at UCLA, but I was too poor, okay? I cannot afford to have a cable installed at my home. So I was using dial-up internet, one of those modem thing. I don't know how many of you in the audience have been using those, the nice noise music to your ear, right? And then mostly back then, I was just using that to check email. And that's more than enough for me because speed was okay. And then I talked to a friend of mine. I said, I think the dial-up is okay. What's the point of, you know, have a cable connecting to your home, get much more speed? What's out there? But today, I don't think many people would be tolerant to the kind of speed of dial-up modem because the low speed would severely restrict the kind of applications and the services you can use, right? Most of today's internet applications, they probably just cannot fly over a dial-up modem connection. So I think it's probably the same. We have seen 4G already enabled tons of internet services and application. 5G is going to be another level up and a new explosion. Once you're been there, so I guess most people probably never would want to go back. That's my guess.
Right. And you talked about some of the advancements in healthcare, and I want to talk to Dr. Prasad about that. When we chatted before this webinar, you talked about the medical internet of things and all the different devices, remote monitoring, remote surgeries. And I'd love to talk more with you about that and how 5G can enable all these futuristic applications.
Absolutely. I think Dr. Fanny, touched upon some very important technical capabilities and the experiences. Now, for medicine, the most important thing is we need to have the right metrics at the right place at the right time for the right purpose. It doesn't have to be high speed at all or high bandwidth. Those bursts of information, can I get that particular strip of a physiological signal that will help me decide what to do for this patient? You don't have to have 24 hours of ECG monitoring. Just give me those instances where there was a variation so I can get a pattern and I can actually treat. Now, the beauty of 5G is you got two parameters that you can actually play with. One is the bandwidth, another is the speed. So many of the applications that can be very effectively used for clinical care requires these bursts of data. So it could be just, I want just this data to get through, have a quality of service, get through the fastest. Whereas there are certain other things where a high bandwidth definitely would be necessary. And on the chat, I just saw, when you have fiber, why would you want to go wireless? Oh, there are a lot of advantages of wireless. Actually, the technology is the same. It's the movement of electrons, whether you push it through a wire or you push it through air using the right type of carrier, right? So with wireless, what happens is care gets mobile. Mobility is the secret now, because when you go and access a patient, if you have to go and give emergency care, really you don't want to transport the patient in that condition to a hospital. If you can offer the care right there, for example, you go in the ambulance has got all the wherewithal, all the medical equipment and the medication. And if I can just connect through a 5G, for a short call with my experts in my home base, man, you've actually, achieved what you want. Treat the patient, leave the patient there. That's the advantage of 5G. Second thing is 5G basically offers this activation of MIoT, which is Medical Internet of Things. Looks like you want to ask a question, and I can continue after that. Go ahead.
No, I love the medical internet of things phrase, but I wanted to ask a question about implementing that technology and what it will take. So I guess that's, yeah.
As with anything, Dr. Fanny went through, 1G, 2G, 3G, 4G. So we have to retrofit our backend, our infrastructure with the right type of antenna system, and it's being done. Of course, market is going to drive it. But at the same time, another beauty of 5G is you can actually install a 5G network inside a hospital. So inside the hospital, you could actually have the fastest wireless. So you can, give care wherever the patients are. Patient can be made mobile. And with this Internet of Things, what happens is you need very small bursts of high-speed data when you're measuring, for example, an EKG or a blood pressure or a blood sugar or an end-tidal CO2. So it could be optimized at the same time, very effective. And this is possible because 5G gives us that flexibility, opposed to what we have right now with Wi-Fi and other things.
So Anna, when it comes to the actual infrastructure that it takes in order to make this happen, what does that mean for a residential area like on Long Island and any of our suburbs?
That's a great question. So it takes a variety of infrastructure. That's one of the biggest misconceptions that people think is that, first of all, 4G is not going to go away. So 5G is going to be a layer that adds to it, but laying the foundation and the existing foundation for 4G actually already supports and enhances the foundation for 5G. So what does that mean? It means essentially Crown Castle's portfolio. You need fiber optic, you need a power source. Typically, it's deployed on existing utility infrastructure. So it means that we deploy on street lights or utility poles. And what we do is we put carry-on size equipment boxes on there with a radio, and that helps deliver and transmit the radio waves and the RF that will enable the connectivity. To Dr. Prasad's point, the tremendous low latency, right? The perceived real-time data transference, the enormous bandwidth that it's going to allow for, and the speed of the connectivity. So it's going to be 4G is going to be supporting the foundation, and what will happen is that it's going to toggle from 5G to 4G. But it's not only going to be small cells, Sky, it's also going to be existing towers that are going to be updated with new radios, and so they're going to have upgrades to them because there are different spectrums that are being auctioned off by the FCC that helps deliver different types of capacity, different types of connectivity throughout different types of distances. So you're going to have towers, fiber optic, and small cells working in concert along with other technologies like indoor distributed antenna systems that will help deliver the technology within buildings. So it's a variety of technology, and we have to remember that 4G is not going to go away. We need to enhance that current infrastructure for 4G and then build on top of it the 5G infrastructure.
So one of the questions from last week actually was about Hurricane Sandy, for example, and someone said when Hurricane Sandy hit my area, the 4G tower didn't work anymore. And the question now is, how is the 5G infrastructure different that it wouldn't be impacted by a storm or an event like that?
That's an interesting question. Typically what happens is, and I don't know this particular situation, but typically what happens is when you have a tower that is not working properly and not delivering the service, it's because of the electric grid. So it really has to do more with because of the energy resiliency, and it has to do more with the electric grid and losing power at that moment, which we did during Hurricane Sandy for, I think it was something close to like 2 to 3 weeks, right? In some areas. And I'm sure that tower got back online. You know, we're federally mandated. 80% of 911 calls are made on mobile devices. And so these towers are mission critical for public safety and resiliency. And many times they have backup generators to prevent, outages of the infrastructure. But in a situation like Hurricane Sandy, it's a force majeure. So it's really going to be about working with the utility and ensuring that we have highly placed backup generators so that we can get the towers on fairly quickly.
Now, as far as aiding the community and understanding, I know I hear some feedback, so I don't know where it's coming from. I apologize. But as far as aiding the community and understanding everything that you just explained, Anna, and all the complexities of it, I wonder, Caitlin, is there messaging like from the coalition, New Yorkers for 5G? You work with communities to help them understand what's going on. I'm wondering if there's messaging or anything you want to add to ease people's minds about this, because a lot of times people are scared of technology. I think people are just scared of the future. We're all, ambivalent. So I want to ask you, Caitlin.
Well, I think our wonderful panelists here really hit on those points, but I think an important thing to talk about is the fact that high-speed connectivity, it really impacts virtually every facet of our lives and will have a large effect on relatively every industry out there. And I think it's really reflected in our diverse coalition membership, many of whom are here on the panel today. Like, our members span the gamut from AARP, for example, to Con Edison, to REVNY, the Seneca Nation of Indians. But at the root of it all of our coalition members understand the importance of increasing next generation connectivity and agree that 5G not only help the economy recover, but also connect new industries with improved performance and efficiency and cost. So kind of to your point, I think it's a matter of using these voices that touch all these industries in a powerful way that move the needle. So having pieces within communities that speak to the safety and the efficacy of 5G, or joining panels today that address that information. That's really where the coalition itself plays a powerful role. That answers your question.
Thank you. And you mentioned the different types of jobs, and I'm thinking now with Fan Ye at Stony Brook, I'm sure the types of students that you have in class are looking to do jobs that didn't exist a couple of years ago when we talk about the advancements in technology. So maybe you could talk to us about the different types of opportunities that are out there and how that will factor into advancing us with 5G and technology and wireless.
Yeah, that's a great question. Many times new technologies are kind of disruptive. They would, on the one hand, probably take down some of the existing job opportunities, but at the same time, they would also bring a lot more new opportunities for new kinds of jobs. So coming to this question of 5G and medical IoT, where Dr. Prasad has addressed a little bit earlier, I want to talk a little bit about one research project I'm working on, which is to use medical IoT devices to provide continuous sensing data about people living at home, aging in place, basically. A lot of baby boomers, I'm not kind of baby boomer, but I have older parents and they live pretty much by themselves, right? And many times I'm concerned or worried about their well-being. Is everything fine? If there's no phone call for quite a while, right? So I have colleagues who have their parents in the 80s or 90s, and some of them just live alone. Okay, you can imagine how stressful the situation could become sometimes. So the idea is if you have a lot of these medical IoT devices, they would be able to capture the critical data about the person continuously. For example, the heart rate, respiration rate, what kind of activities they're doing, or God forbid, in some emergency situation like trip and a fall, not moving, then these medical IoT devices would be able to detect such kind of emergencies. And then through 5G, through intelligent algorithms, all these events can be detected almost in real time. And then family members, so doctors, or even 911 could be notified in real time. So this indeed can make a great difference between life and death for many of these scenarios. And the new job opportunities in creating such kind of new medical IoT devices, and also job opportunities for delivering care, but in a very different way. I think these are all some of the new kinds of jobs the technology will be creating.
And it'll ultimately benefit our entire economy, right? Because the biggest strain, or one of the biggest strains, is the cost of healthcare. And I know that Dr. Prasad told me it's $5,000 a day to go to the emergency room, and being in the ICU takes $10,000 a day to operate. So with 5G, it seems like the technology that we'll have available to us will help prevent putting someone in the hospital unnecessarily, because we can monitor these things ahead of time.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think you brought up a great point. So some of the things these medical IoT 5G together can do is there's this hospital readmission law and policy, right? If you're discharged and then within 30 days readmitted again, then the hospital will take a very huge loss. Right now, after people are discharged, there's usually very little means to help them monitoring themselves. Am I okay on the route of recovery, or maybe something is happening again, right? But imagine you can take such a kit of sensing devices together with you, and with 5G, with new communication, you can get hooked up into some intelligent backend monitoring. If anything is happening, then there will be early intervention. You don't have to wait until something really bad and then you got hospitalized again, incurring huge bills.
Right. And that's something I know that you're working on, Dr. Prasad, with Northwell.
Absolutely. I think just to continue what Dr. Fan is saying, now we are basically doing, proof of concept with patients using wearables, and wearables lend themselves to the 5G. We have the, patient touching devices, for example, like the Fitbits, the Samsungs, the Apples of the world. And now with the connectivity that we can get with a 5G type of a backbone, we have the ecosystem that actually helps us to make positive impact on readmission rates, positive impacts on discharge rates, so that people can be cared for in the environment where they recover the fastest. And the place where they recover the fastest, according to literature, is their own homes, because that is their comfort place. Number one. Number two, can we treat them at the point of service? Can we treat them at home and just leave them without having to get them into the hospitals? Now the irony here is it's funny, because we take sick people and then shift them into a place full of sick people, which is the hospital. So hospital acquired infection and everything else becomes a big challenge. And when we triage the care, there you will see a sizable population that could be treated effectively, or even more effectively than in the hospital, at home, because we have technology like 5G giving us the bandwidth that's needed to take proactive measures, as Dr. Fanny was saying, before it really becomes an emergent situation. So we are doing that with IoTs. We are also using commoditized technology like Amazon Alexa, as well as Google Home, to see how we can actually tether ourselves to the patient. So many of the patients who are geriatric, who are not very tech savvy, or who are from different ethnic backgrounds that we actually have in our New York State, they could just talk to it instead of having to deal with technology, where we could almost do telehealth consults, and they could say, Alexa, call my doctor. Okay, so we are basically doing these trials in patient care setting, and it is very, very exciting.
It is exciting. And I can't help but think something I mentioned earlier about how the pandemic really, look, so many people stuck at home that are utilizing some of this technology. Maybe it came earlier in our lives than it would have had we not been stuck inside because of the pandemic.
Absolutely. Necessity is the mother of invention, and that has been proved again. Even though pandemic actually took a lot of lives of our dear ones, it did give us in the opportunity as well as the wherewithal to use this commoditized consumer level technology that is available, that has always been available, and put it to good use, to very effective use, which saved patient lives practically.
So I know I maybe touched on this before, but I want to know how quickly, when can we expect to see some of these things that we're talking about, some of these advancements? Is it happening in 2021? What can we see when it comes to some of these advancements?
Absolutely. Here is something that we can put our evidence on. Telehealth was something which was looked down upon, right? I mean, oh my God, we can't do telehealth. We can't afford. We won't be reimbursed the whole 9 yards, and it was put as something in the closet. Look what happened. Telehealth was the only modality that you could care for the patients. No, not just care for the patients. Using telehealth technology on even commoditized things like Amazon Echo and Amazon Show, what we were able to do is to separate the doctors from the patients. Because if doctors start falling for COVID, we are in a real disaster. Not only were we able to separate the doctors from the patients, the patients from the families, we were able to tether them using very low cost edge devices, as we call, using the Wi-Fi technology that we have, even using 4G LTE technology. So the family was able to visit with the patients were able to talk to the families, and this was life-saving. You have some very heartfelt stories on Northwell website, if you go there, where a mother had to give birth and had to be separated from the baby. Only she could visit the baby through telehealth, and then she was able to unite with the baby once she was her COVID was taken care of. And there are some very compelling stories. And let me tell you, this was made possible only because of these commoditized edge technologies and the available of Wi-Fi in the current state. 5G would be, godsend, to be very frank with you.
Now, a lot of people have a hard time adjusting to using technology. And I wondered if anyone can speak to the educational resources to help someone like, I think of my mom. Hi, Mom, if you're watching, but I think of my mom who to this day still doesn't quite fully understand how to use her cell phone the best, So when we're talking about a lot of these advancements and monitoring someone's blood pressure from afar, what sort of educational resources will there be for people who aren't as used to using technology in order to grasp some of this as we move forward?
Definitely. One thing is the technology has become so user-friendly. We are moving towards UI, UX, technology, wherein we are coming towards that one proven technology that actually has stood the test of times, which is the remote control. Even my 90-year-old aunt can actually handle a remote control, very, very efficiently. So that simplicity of UI and UX is there. And second thing is the audio interface. You could basically say, hey, Google, hey, Siri, or whatever, measure my blood pressure, and it will actually do it for you. So this type of natural interfaces and advancement in UI and UX is going to make education much easier, because it will not be one off that they have to learn. And we are seeing this with the patient population, even with geriatric population, where they are able to learn this step 1, 2, 3, and then practice it. I think it's because the environment is so full of technology. Second thing is they have youngsters in the house. We always tell to the geriatric people, if you have a problem, do you have a high school kid? Yes, ask him or her, they'll solve it for you. And that's really become the reality right now. Maybe Dr. Fanny you may want to comment on the UI UX development, because that's a very important field for patient education.
Yeah, absolutely. I think people doing technology does also carry this responsibility to make the technology more accessible, more usable to people, because we need to be aware of the diverse population we're dealing with. It's not just the people like us who do technology for a living, but also many, many other people that we want to them to be able to benefit. Then the UI, UX, the interface design has to be really intuitive and natural. So there are a few things I can cover.
UI, UX?
UI is user interface. So this is the interface, the means through which you interact with the computer system. And in the old days, it's just a type keyboard. You have a character screen and you type the keyboard. That's the only thing. And then later there's graphical user interface. That's the things we're familiar with these days, like touch screen. And then the next level of advance is to use much, much more intuitive means to interact. For example, like using gestures. Right now, let's say I want to control the lights in my home, right? I probably have a smartphone app that I push button. That's okay, but more intuitive way would be I make certain gestures in the air, like I pull down and then lights turn off, like I flash up and then lights turn on, and just different ways I wave my hands in the air that will be sensed by sensing technology and turn into different commands. So these are more and more intuitive and less burden to people. So the best technology, there's a quote, is those really hide behind the scenes and not the center stage. I think the things we have like smartphone today is far from ideal technology, because look at people's attention focus, right? Mm-hmm. Even within family, when people are sitting together, the attention focus is the phone. That's really not what we want for technology. You should be behind the scenes and serve the people, facilitate the exchange and the interaction of people naturally in a much more intuitive manner. I think people are going towards that direction, but probably will still take some time before we get there.
When you talk about that behind the scenes, I think of those glasses that came out a while ago, like the Google glasses.
Right. That's part of the AR thing, augmented reality. Augmented reality is just like in Terminator, the movie, right? The Terminator's view, you see a real world, and then you see recognition text and annotated information. So it's been a very fascinating technology, and people are envisioning this could be used in many different applications and scenarios. And one of the places where this would indeed become very interesting is in vehicular environment. Mm-hmm. Okay, vehicles these days, they are becoming computers, and they are becoming sensors on the wheels. It's no longer just transportation tool. It's a computer that you're driving, okay? Whether or not you realize that, but when these cars, they are all able to sense the surrounding environment, they can analyze and process huge amount of information in real time. And then when you look around, you can imagine through some sort of HUD, head-up display. I think that's what it is. It's a really advanced technology used for fighter pilots, but then it's becoming to go into some of the civilian application area, projection of information on windshield or different display. So this can indeed help you as a driver to increase your safety tremendously. Anytime you make any move, there would be annotations, there would be information notify you. Maybe there's a car also trying to merge from the other side of the lane. So be careful, don't do that merging as yet. Just wait a little bit. Okay, so a lot of things are indeed coming.
Right, and that you need 5G for that, because like you were saying earlier, you need that fast connectivity. If you're driving, it's true. My sister has a Subaru, and her car, the steering wheel shakes and vibrates if someone is on, in her blind spot. So you need 5G because you need to be notified instantly if someone's there. There can't be any latency like what you were talking about before. So am I correct? That's the application of 5G. That's why we need this. That's why it makes sense.
Exactly. That's one of the classical scenarios for 5G because of the high speed, low latency. And when you're driving, come on, you cannot drag a cable behind you, all right? There's no way you could do this through some other technology. So 5G for the auto industry has been the big bet. They're betting heavily. 5G would be the standard for communication. For V2X, X stand for anything, vehicle to vehicle, vehicle to backend infrastructure, like roadside intelligent boxes, or vehicle to pedestrians. So that's where the whole auto industry is betting at this time.
Right. So it's not just autonomous vehicles. It's not just for super futuristic flying cars and autonomous vehicles. It's really for these day-to-day applications that these vehicles have now and that they're going to improve moving forward.
Exactly, exactly. Of course, for fully autonomous vehicles, that's a big dream. Personally, I don't see that coming anytime soon. But even before that, there are many very valuable and life-saving assistive technology that can be enabled just for a human driver for our everyday commuting.
Mm-hmm. So I want to turn our attention to any questions. We have 15 minutes left of this conversation. So if you do have questions and you're watching, please chat them in and we will try and answer as many as we can. I know that there were still some questions about health, which we addressed in the beginning of this panel about the health and safety. If there's anything else that our panelists want to add, we had Dr. Prasad from Northwell talk about some of the health and safety, please.
So, I mean, let me make it very clear to everybody, please. 5G does not cause any type of physiological or anatomical disformities. Okay, it is not proved. We do not have studies that prove it. This is being studied. The effect of radio frequency energy has been studied for more than 60 to 70 years in one of the best scholarly environments. Okay. The second thing is, just to put people's mind at ease, 5G is inherent in the human body. We have radio frequency emanating from the human body. People may start shuddering a little bit, but we use those electromagnetic waves to monitor you. Your EKGs, your EEGs, your EMGs, the way the nerves actually communicate from your brain to your limbs, the way it responds to decrease or increase in homeostasis and everything is all through radio frequency and electrical pulses. So, to even think that something in the 5G range, which is such, a frequency spectrum that doesn't affect any type of cellular mechanisms, that it is going to take down my immune system or is going to make me go crazy, has no scientific basis. Science is the only one that can answer these questions through evidence. There is no evidence because radio frequency in these spectrums and other spectrums have been used for a long time in medicine. The magnetic resonance imaging is completely on RF signals. So without going too deep into the engineering as well as the mathematics behind it, one thing is, from the scientific community, I can assure you that there is no evidence, and we need not be scared about 5G really making us all crazy or turning us into aliens.
Now, Dr. Prasad, what would you say to someone who says to you that they have headaches from 5G?
I can give them a headache from a placebo. You know the placebo effect, right? So
right.
Today, if I tell you and say, Sky, starting tomorrow, Crown Castle is starting this, high energy study where they are energizing, 6 or 7 transponders with 5G. So watch out for maybe effects on yourself. In the morning, you're going to get up because humans are composed of psychology as well as anatomy and physiology. You get up, oh my God, it looks like I have a little bit of a headache. Right. When you think that you have a headache, yes, you do. Because, Purna basically told me yesterday that they are energizing, these 5G effectors, and you're going to be getting this massive bombardment of radio frequency signal. And then you're going to call Anna and say, Anna, you know what? I think I'm experiencing some, headaches. So this is called the placebo effect. That's why when we test, even in the vaccines, we give the real vaccines and we give the placebo vaccines and we double blind them because we don't want anybody to know who is given what and then look for the end effectors. When you do double blind studies, which have been done in terms of 5G, in terms of radio frequency, there is no evidence. I mean, we are not just speaking because we want to speak. We are speaking with evidence in mind. There's tons of literature, highly scholarly evaluated literature, which will tell you very clearly. So please, do not assume that you read something on the newspaper or you basically read on the internet, that you're going to start getting it the very next day. I'm not saying that it's not the human, trait. It's a human behavior, but let's base our, feelings, our understanding on scientific literature and evidence.
So thank you. I hope that that really dispels some of the myths out there and answers some of the questions that have come in during the course of this conversation about the safety of 5G. I have a question from Cynthia. Why is there so much controversy about what companies or countries will control or build 5G?
That's a great question. And it is essentially an international trade issue where you have a company called Huawei essentially having the most advanced and cheapest form of the actual hardware, the radio systems. And it's really an international conversation that has to happen individually with each country on whether they or not they feel comfortable moving forward with procuring Huawei and the Chinese infrastructure. I believe the consensus in the United States has been from the Obama administration through the Trump administration, I believe it will continue to the Biden administration, is that our agencies do not feel comfortable moving forward with Huawei infrastructure. And so we are relying on companies like Nokia and Ericsson to deliver the technology, as well as a bunch of others. So while there's controversy, I believe the United States has been significantly consistent in us not feeling comfortable. And so we're going to be using only approved, federally regulated technology to deliver with specific companies that have been approved by the FCC and trade organizations.
I hope that answers that question. And if anyone else has any other questions, please do submit them and we'll spend the next few minutes going over any other questions. How is 5G in terms of privacy? Kathy asks.
I can respond to that question. Actually, this is not a new question. In particular for 5G, I think almost, and because technology many times indeed is a double-edged sword. Okay, that's true. On the one hand, it can bring us a lot of benefits and a lot of new opportunities. But at the same time, when we implement and use that technology, indeed, we need to be careful, to be aware of the potential, some of the negative consequences that people can use technology for bad reasons, for bad purposes, that indeed can happen. This is just not limited to 5G, general internet, right? Or even telephone. I think even today, there are many people fall to phone scam, different kind of schemes, right? But then I think what's needed is at the same time, when we're developing technology, we have awareness and we come up with a clear picture how the technology could be misused or abused for wrong purposes. And then we also at the same time design at both technology front, what are the technical solutions to defeat some of these attacks, and also from policy, law and regulation aspect, what are the rules that we can put in place to prevent such kind of things from happening? Because I think technology advancement will be going there forever. Okay, you cannot stop the movement of that train. So I think the way I view this is how we are going to come up with a coherent set of solutions, not just technological, but societal, policy, law, all of these at the same time so that we can make the best use and make the most out of technology. At the same time, minimize potential negative consequences.
Now, who is that up to, right? Is it up to our legislators, scientists, professors? Who's coming up with this?
I do believe this is a discussion everyone should be joining. It's not just people doing technology development, because many times I have to admit my view could be a little bit narrow-minded. I'm just too focused on how can I get the technology better, faster, right? But at the same time, I think the general public needs to be a big player in the game, because eventually they are the user of the technology, and whatever benefits or adverse impact is the general public that would carry that weight, right? So I think this is really a discussion that should be happening among many, many different parties, technology, industry, government, general public, university, nonprofit. I think that discussion really needs to happen so that we can make the best use of technology, at the same time minimize its bad consequences.
And that's sort of like our, hey, we have the advocacy community, the professional community, the professorial community, the academic community, industry, physician. So we have everyone here represented to talk about this conversation in a robust and well-rounded way. Are there any other questions or any other last thoughts or takeaway sentiments that our panelists that you'd like to deliver to everyone who's watching as we conclude? Nope, just that 5G is safe. Long Island is headed in that direction. It's part of our medical devices and helping remote monitor. It's part of our cars. It really propelled our life now, during the pandemic. So those are all some of the things that we talked about in today's show, the Power 5G Part 2 on Herald Inside LI. It's the last episode of 2020 today. So I thank everyone for joining us. I thank our panelists and for our audience. And I will share my conclusion slide now that has our email address. And as we plan for 2021 for season 2 of Herald Inside LI, I invite you to email us, visit our website. Today's episode is recorded like all other episodes have been. There's 14 episodes in season 1, if you will, from 2020. So please send us feedback, visit the website. And we thank New Yorkers for 5G and Crown Castle for sponsoring today's webinar on 5G technology. And we look forward to the future. And take care, everyone.